it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to sew some buttons onto your project if the buttonholes are way too small. Now typically us knitters and crocheters will use a tapestry needle, or some people call them a yarn needle. And this is a fairly small one, but the buttonholes that I have here are really, really tiny. And it's not really a big deal. It's just a little extra step, and they can go through much easier and look fine on your project. Now I like to use matching yarn when I sew my buttons on, and in this case the buttonhole is on the back of the button, but typically when you have a button with buttonholes that go through it, it is nice to see the matching yarn. So when you want to use the matching yarn and use thick yarn and you don't quite have a small enough needle, you can do a couple of things. Now you could take a needle and thread and just sew them on the traditional way, but I'm going to show you a little trick. Now I use a tiny little thin piece of wire. This is the kind of wire you use to make jewelry. It comes in a spool, but you don't have to use this kind of wire. You can use something you have around the house. I've even used the wire through the center of a twist tie, for example, that comes with bags around the house. You can kind of pull that plastic sleeve off and use the wire from that as well. But I had a little piece of jewelry wire that I was going to use today. So I've already sewn two of these on. I cut a matching piece of thread. Now, as a side note, this is the Joyful Jewels button scarf. This is a free pattern on the Flux blog. There's a full video tutorial for that. It's a really versatile piece. And these buttons, I loved them because it was called Joyful Jewels. And the aqua kind of repeated through the yarn, and these were perfect buttons until I discovered the buttonhole was super tiny. So not to worry. So grab your matching piece of yarn. You'll still need your tapestry needle. That's going to help you out in just a minute. But to pass the yarn through the buttonhole, what we're going to do is take our piece of yarn, wire, and see how I have it sort of bent into a V shape? This is going to act as our temporary needle. Then you're going to take your yarn and you're just going to kind of hook it onto the piece of wire. And I apologize for the thinness of the wire if you're having trouble seeing it. But you're just going to create like a link with it, okay? Now take your wire ends as if you would a regular needle and just send them through the button. Now this is very thin wire, so it can easily go through the holes now. And we're just going to pull it through. And even you can see the yarn is way too thick for the buttonhole. Now, what you're going to do is remove the wire now that we've gotten it through, and you can set that aside. You can put it in your tool bag for another time, and then just pull one end out, okay? Just leave the other end in there, and then kind of center it on the piece of yarn, just like that, okay? Now, I've already sewn these on, and I'm going to put the third one down at this end here. So at this point, we can grab our tapestry needle and lay the button where you want it to go and thread the tapestry needle. You could probably use the wire for this, but it's much, much easier to use this tapestry needle. Okay, and then you're just going to sew it on there. Okay, so go down, just kind of lay the button where you want it to be and go down through the bottom here and pull that through. You can do this with your fingers too if your yarn is chunky enough and your stitches are large enough to fit through. So take your other tapestry needle. I like the precision, so I'm going to use the needle for mine. Okay, so take that other one, that other end, and send it through the bottom here. And now you have two ends on the back of your piece here. And then what you're going to do is just tie it. Now before you start making knots, flip it back over. Just make sure everything is where you want it to be, okay? If you're happy with that, flip it back over. So I tied it once. Let's do 2, 3, and 4, okay? Then you can grab your tapestry needle and you'll have your ends. Now this is technically the back side of the scarf, but because scarves move around a lot and you can sometimes see it as they're swinging around, I like to weave the ends in, but it's up to you. Okay, so I have a green end. I'm going to try and stay in this green section here as I weave the ends in. So just go through these back loops only of your piece. and you're going to go in one direction, come back in the other direction, and then just snip that yarn, and then you'll repeat the same thing for the other end as well. So our buttons look great. They're sewn on, and even though they were tiny, we still made them work with a little wire trick. So that is how you sew some buttons onto your piece if your buttonholes are much too tiny to fit your tapestry needle through. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.